Space was quiet again, too quiet. 3 months after Sanctuary, Jake Harris still woke to the sound of alarms that weren't there. The shuttle drifted between dead satellites, its engines whispering like tired lungs. Behind him, Ilara slept, sword across her knees, the faint scar on her side glowing pale in the dark. He told himself the fighting was over. The broadcast had freed the truth, but every time they crossed a relay network, he saw the same message ripple across public channels. Wanted, Jake Harris and unidentified Zira entity, alive. Then, one night the sword began to hum again, soft, steady, alive. Ilara opened her eyes. "It remembers something," she said. Something calling from the ice. Jake frowned. "Another vault?" She shook her head. "No, a heartbeat. If they ignored the signal, someone else would answer it. If the wrong hands reached it first, the cycle of extinction would begin again. Their freedom ends. Capture means public execution. If the Echo hides another Zero weapon, letting it awaken would undo everything they proved. The alliance has fractured, half wanting peace, half screaming for vengeance. One wrong discovery could unite them in fear again." Ilara looked at the pulse on the radar, faint and blue. "It calls to what I used to be," she whispered. Jake set a course anyway. "Then we find it before the ghosts do." The trail led them to a world without a name, only a coordinate lost in archive dust. A stormed planet of ice plains and black mountains. The sky never cleared. Lightning crawled like veins under cloud. They landed hard, skidding across glassy ground. The hum was everywhere now, bleeding through their suits. Under the frost, light moved, blue patterns shifting like veins alive beneath the ice. Ilara knelt and pressed her palm down. "This is Zira design, but it feels wrong." "Cold inside!" A crack tore open beneath them. Light surged upward, forming circles of symbols that spun around her hand. A voice spoke in static clear tone. "Designation Keeper 2. Command input required." Ilara froze. "The Keepers were all destroyed." Jake drew his weapon. Guess one overslept. They descended through the fissure into a hollow city of crystal and steel, every wall etched with sleeping circuits. At its heart waited a smaller capsule. Frost shimmered on glass. Inside lay another Zira, armor darker than night, eyes dim but open. Ilara Zira unit recognized, the pod intoned. "Directive failure detected. Commencing termination." Jake barely saw the movement. The figure rose with impossible speed. The clash rang like thunder, blade against blade, blue fire scattering across the frozen floor. "This is what we were built for," the newcomer said, voice twin-layered like Ilara's used to be. "To end wars by ending life." Ilara's reply was low, almost sad. "I was built for that once. Now I fight to stop it." Steel met light again, sparks painting the air. Jake scrambled to the control dais, trying to read alien glyphs through panic. Warning symbols pulsed red. Reactor overload. "Ilara!" he shouted. "This place is about to blow." The enemy turned its white eyes toward him. "Then we end together." "As designed." Ilara drove forward, sliding under its guard, striking the armor seam. The blow stunned it long enough for Jake to trigger a purge sequence. The vault howled. Energy shot up the walls. The glacier above began to fracture. They ran. Behind them, the frozen city folded in on itself, collapsing into radiant dust. When they reached the shuttle, the ground cracked apart, swallowing the ruins whole. Hours later, drifting above the shattered world, Jake scanned the comm logs. "One transmission left the planet before the explosion," he said quietly. Ilara's fingers tightened on the blade. "Show me." On screen, a single line blinked. "To all Zira units. The war is not over." She stared at it for a long time. "They're awake." Jake turned slowly. "There are more?" "There were always more," she whispered. "Dormant, waiting for a call I swore would never come." The sword began to hum again, lower, deeper, like morning. Far across the void, Admiral Marcus Warren stood on the bridge of a new flagship. The broadcast from Sanctuary still haunted his sleep, but the galaxy's fear had given him power again. He watched the same message flash across his monitors. "So," he murmured, "the ghosts have decided to walk." He turned to his officers. Track the signal. Find Harris and the Zira. Bring me the echoes of the blade. The chase began silently. Every relay they passed flickered with Alliance code. Jake cut transponders and drifted through a field of wrecked freighters using their shadows as cover. Ilara stood near the viewport, eyes on distant light. You should leave me, she said. Not happening. Warren will never stop. Jake managed a faint grin. Neither will I. When the sensors finally caught the pursuing ships, he pushed the shuttle into a gravity well between twin moons. Ion storms screamed across their hull. Blue lightning danced over metal. Inside, everything smelled of burning circuits and ozone. Through it all, Ilara whispered to the blade in her language, a sound like wind through broken glass. They escaped the storm barely alive and found refuge inside a derelict observation ring. There, Ilara discovered something the Alliance had missed, a Zira beacon buried in the station's spine. It wasn't a weapon. It was a message recorder, millions of voices stored in light. Memories of the Zira civilization, sealed before extinction. Jake stared at the holograms flickering above the console. Families, cities, laughter. They weren't monsters, he said softly. They were us, Ilara answered. Afraid, proud, tired of dying. Then the beacon's tone changed. A map formed, hundreds of points lighting up across known space. More sleepers, Jake whispered. Ilara's hand tightened on the sword. They will all hear the call. The Alliance fleet arrived before dawn, silver against the nebula. Jake powered the shuttle, but Ilara stopped him. If we run, this never ends. He looked at her, saw the calm resolve in her eyes. What do you want to do? Show them what they fear, truth. She linked the sword to the beacon's core. Light burst outward. Every memory, every truth, every name of the Zira race streaming across open channels. For one breathless moment, the entire sector saw not weapons, but people. Warren's voice thundered through comms. You'll burn every system you touch, Ilara answered softly. Then let it burn bright enough to see what you destroyed. The sword's energy reached its limit, cracked, and went silent. The beacon dimmed. The transmission was gone, but the message had already escaped, copied to every listening relay. After the blast, the station drifted quietly. The fleet withdrew. No one knew what to do next. Ilara sat in the cockpit, the broken blade across her lap. Jake took the pilot's chair, hands shaking from exhaustion. Is it over? He asked. She looked out at the stars. Truth never ends, Jake. It only echoes. Far away, deep in the void, faint blue lights began to awaken, one by one. Each pulse answered the signal she had unleashed. Some shone gentle. Some burned like vengeance. Jake met her gaze. What do we do when they come? Ilara smiled faintly, the first real smile he'd ever seen from her. We teach them to live. The shuttle turned toward the light. Behind them, the ruins glowed blue for a moment longer, then faded into darkness. Ahead, the stars waited, bright and endless, and somewhere in that endlessness, the blade began to hum again. Their ship dropped into orbit around a shattered moon called Mendara. Sensors caught Zira energy surges beneath the surface. They found her there, a Zira woman with silver armor, eyes dull from centuries of sleep. When she spoke, her voice trembled like a broken instrument. Who calls me? Ilara stepped forward. One who survived. Recognition flickered. Then rage. You betrayed the directive. You allied with them. Ilara didn't move. I found another way. The woman drew her blade. Then die with your pets. Jake raised his rifle, but Ilara stopped him. No, she said. She's not our enemy. She's afraid. The fight that followed was brutal, brief, and sad. Not hatred, but misunderstanding. When Ilara finally disarmed her, both fell to their knees in the dust. The silver warrior whispered, If what you say is true, then the choir has no conductor. Far across space, Admiral Warren watched the choir spread. Whole colonies broadcast Zyra transmissions, civilians chanting for truth. He saw only chaos. He gathered his officers in the war room. "These creatures are rewriting our history," he said. "We'll answer with purity." His scientists unveiled a new weapon, the resonator, a satellite system built to silence Zyra frequencies. "A single pulse could erase their energy signatures permanently." "Deploy it," Warren ordered. "If we kill their voices, the people will forget them again." Ilara's message spread faster than the Alliance could suppress it. Hundreds of Zyra, scattered, waking, answered her call to a neutral world, Halion, a place of dust and long horizons. Jake watched from the ridge as blue figures filled the valley, some in armor, some barefoot, all lost. Ilara stood before them, her voice carrying through thin air. "We were made to destroy, but now we can choose to build." Murmurs rose, uncertain, wounded. One Zyra warrior stepped forward, massive, scarred, his voice a thunderclap. "You ask us to forgive what burned our worlds? Never." The crowd roared approval. Ilara didn't flinch. "Then you'll keep fighting ghosts while the living die." Jake saw it then, the split forming. Half the choir followed her calm, the rest followed vengeance. The choir had shattered before it even began to sing. The sky burned at dusk. Alliance fleets appeared above Halion, their hulls gleaming like blades. Warren's voice echoed across all channels. "By order of the Purity Coalition, you are infected anomalies. Prepare for cleansing." A hum rolled through the air, low, endless. The resonator fired. Every Zyra in the valley screamed. Their energy flickered, skin paling to gray. Even Ilara dropped to her knees, clutching her chest. Jake ran to her, trying to shield her from nothing he could see. She gasped. "He's erasing us." Jake dragged her toward the ship. "Then we hit back before you vanish." They had one. Weapon. The broken blade, now rebuilt using fragments from the Mindara vault. It could channel resonance, not to destroy, but to amplify. Jake and Ilara reached the highest ridge. The choir below was falling silent, one voice at a time. Warren's fleet hovered, bright as judgment. Ilara stabbed the sword into the ground. "Every voice sing!" A light bloomed from her chest, spreading through the blade, then the ground, then the sky. Every Zyra pulse answered, not in words, but in pure sound. The resonator shattered mid-broadcast. Warren's fleet staggered, comms filled with static. And for one long moment, the galaxy heard them. The choir of Zyra, a song of grief and defiance woven through light. On the flagship, alarms blared. Warren watched the sky fracture into sound. He fired everything he had, but his own systems failed, overwhelmed by resonance feedback. Through cracked glass, he saw their light reach him. For the first time, he looked afraid. "History," he whispered, "was never yours to write." Then the bridge went dark. Silence followed, not emptiness, but peace. Ilara's blade dimmed. She fell into Jake's arms, trembling. "It's done," he said. "No," she breathed. "It's begun." Across the colonies, people replayed the sound. A song that could not be translated, only felt. Children called it the hope tone. Governments called it dangerous. Jake and Ilara watched from their ship, orbiting what was left of Halion. The ground below glowed with faint blue veins, not scars, but roots. "The choir lives," Jake said. Ilara smiled weakly. "Then maybe so does the future." Weeks later, the wanted bulletins vanished. Warren's fleet was gone, but new frequencies whispered through space, unknown, unclaimed. Zyra voices learning to speak again, this time in harmony with human ones. Ilara stood at the viewport, her reflection haloed in starlight. "You know this isn't peace," Jake said. "No," she answered. "It's possibility." She touched the hilt of the blade. It no longer glowed, but it hummed faintly, like a heartbeat. "We were forged for war," she said. "Now we forge meaning." Jake smiled. "That's a good start." The ship turned toward a new system, uncharted, bright, alive. Behind them, the choir's song faded into quiet promise. Ahead, stars waited to be rewritten. Despite everything, they continued.